That's fine, Scott. Glad to have you.
All right, Mr. Shipley, do we have everyone we need?
Yeah, let me go ahead and call out the roll for the Board of Zoning Appeals members, and we can have everybody answer if they're present. I believe I see that they are, but we'll go ahead and get that on record. Jennifer Collins.
Here.
Okay. Jim Holliday.
Here.
Keith Alley, of course, is here. Scott Meyer.
Here.
And John Hoffman.
John Hoffman here.
Okay, John. John is the new Board of Zoning Appeals member replacing Michael Wilson. So we're glad to have him on board. He's worked with the town on a couple other recent projects, including the sign ordinance, which was a pretty involved effort, as well as the aesthetic plan that we just got adopted by the Board of Mayor and Alderman a couple of weeks ago, dealing with vertical utility infrastructure. So I think John will be a great addition to this board. And so anyway, I think everyone is here from the board level. Let me double check and make sure. Yeah, Chris is here now. Okay. I think it looks like the applicants are also present. So we're in good shape.
All right, this is Keith Alley again, and I am the chair of the Town of Farragut Board of Zoning Appeals, calling to order the February 24, 2021 meeting of the Farragut Board of Zoning Appeals. We have 3 items on tonight's agenda. The first item on tonight's agenda is the approval of the minutes for the August 26, 2020 meeting. Has everyone had an opportunity to review those minutes?
Yes.
All right. Then the chair will entertain any motions with regard to the approval of the minutes for the August 26, 2020 meeting.
So moved. This is Scott Meyer.
Do I have a second? Is that Jennifer Collins?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. I have a first and a second. Do we have any discussion? If there's no discussion, all in favor, please affirm. Mark, are you going to read down the roll for these?
Yes, I'll do that since this is virtual. Board Member Collins.
Yes.
Board Member Holliday.
Yes.
Chairman Alley.
Yes.
Board Member Myers.
Yes.
And of course, Board Member Hoffman was not on the board, so he would not be able to confirm that. So the motion passes 4-0.
Very good. The second item on the agenda is a public hearing on a request for a variance to Chapter 4, Section 22, Pedestrian Facilities of the Farragut Zoning Ordinance to omit approximately 125 feet of sidewalk along Admiral Road in association excuse me, with the Horizon Plaza site for the property at 11011 Kingston Pike, east intersection of Admiral Road and Kingston Pike, Zone C1 and FPD, 6.08 acres. Urban Engineering, Inc. is the applicant. And do we have the applicant present this evening?
Yes, I believe Chris Sharp is present. Yes, I see him there. If it's okay with the chairman, I'll go ahead and give an overview of the request, and then if y'all have any questions for me or the applicant, we can probably be able to answer those. This is a request for variance from a section of the zoning ordinance that has the requirement for pedestrian facilities as part of a site plan review through the Planning Commission. Basically, in the zoning ordinance, a pedestrian facility is required as part of the site plan along all collector and arterial streets as part of that project. This particular property is at the east intersection of Admiral Road and Kingston Pike. Kingston Pike is a major arterial road. Admiral Road is a collector street, so a pedestrian facility is required across both frontages. The applicant is planning to construct a sidewalk along Kingston Pike, the entire frontage there, and then along Admiral Road to their access point. And then basically, due to topographic reasons, the property kind of is, I'm sure y'all are pretty familiar with this, but the property drops off very steeply away from Kingston Pike toward Turkey Creek, which is on the north end of the property. And basically, they're requesting to not construct the sections north of the access point along Admiral Road at this time due to the topographic issues there. It's going to require not only, they are obviously going to be filling a lot of the property in order to do the development, but they're also, for the sidewalk, because it would go further beyond where the proposed fill is, we'd also be getting into a lot of FEMA related requirements. And basically for the sidewalk to make sense, the bridge itself, the culvert that goes over Turkey Creek, would really ultimately have to be widened. So essentially the sidewalk would terminate into really nothing at this point. And there really aren't any plans this time to construct a facility further north along Admiral Road, though it would certainly be a good connection. So this is very similar to a variance request that was presented to the board a few years ago for the property just across the street that's now Premier Eye Care. They basically had the same issue where the property drops off steeply toward Turkey Creek. And the variance was granted for, in the case of their property, about 85 feet of sidewalk that wasn't constructed. But the board did place a condition on the approval. That was that the applicant would prepare a sidewalk completion covenant and deed restriction that would run with the land, that would then be reviewed by the town attorney. So basically the applicant's attorney would put together something, our attorney would look at it, and then once approved by the town attorney, it would be recorded. And basically that covenant would stipulate that should the bridge be widened in the future as part of a larger road improvement project, that the property owner, whoever it is at that time in the future, at 11011 Kingston Pike, would be responsible for extending the sidewalk to the north property line. So that's the condition that was placed on the Premier Eye Care. They did follow that requirement. There is a recorded covenant that basically binds the property owner there to completing this pedestrian facility along their part of Admiral Road should the bridge be widened and that road be improved in the future. So that would be caught during a title search. So if you're worried about 10 years from now, if they actually started a improvement project and it being missed, part of what happens with road improvement projects is there's, lawyers get involved mostly, and we have to figure out how we get the facilities where they need to be. And certainly looking at what is of record is an important step in that process. So the staff does recommend approval of this variance due to topographic reasons, and with the understanding that the applicant would have their attorney prepare this covenant. It would have to be approved by the town attorney and then recorded to ensure that the applicant or the property owner at that time would be finishing that facility to their property line should it become applicable in the future. So if anybody has any questions of me, this is just a just to show you here, this is a section of Admiral Road. And what this demonstrates is, it's a little hard to understand, but the narrow part is where the culvert is that essentially crosses Turkey Creek. And the further you go north, you start getting into not only flood fringe, but floodway. And then you really are, you've got a really massive project for, at this time, the sidewalk really, not going anywhere at this point. So from the staff's perspective, it actually would probably be better just to terminate it to the driveway like they're showing, because there's really no point going to the north at this time. Does anyone have any questions about that? Again, the applicant's engineer is here. If you have any technical questions about the project and why the facility, why they're requesting the variance at this time.
All right, if the applicant's representative would like to present any testimony to the board, I will need to swear you in. So if you'll raise your hand, and do you swear or affirm that any testimony you provide to the board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
All right, and if you would start by telling us your name and your address and your relationship to this project.
My name is Chris Sharp with Urban Engineering in Farragut. Our address is 11852 Kingston Pike. And I am, Urban Engineering is the applicant, and we're also we're the site, the civil engineer for the project. And thank you, Mark, for well describing the project, and I'll be happy to answer any questions I may.
All right, do any of our board members have any questions of either Mr. Shipley or the applicant's representative?
I'd like to ask one, if I may. This is John Hoffman. I went out Tuesday and walked the perimeter a little bit just to get a feel for what the landscape looked like and what was done with Premier across the street from it. And it's really hard from the drawings to get a real good sense of what the contour lines are. So the question I'm about to ask may be a really silly one, but I'm going to ask it anyhow. I noticed that over at Premier, they extended the sidewalk maybe 40 feet north from their driveway entrance. I'm not quite sure where your driveway entrance is as compared to that one. But as I looked at your drawings, it appears to me you're going to be putting a fair amount of fill in there to accommodate the dumpster pad and also that Admiral Road entranceway. So I was wondering, if the fill's already there anyhow, would it be appropriate to be consistent with what was approved on the other side of the street? Would it be appropriate to extend that sidewalk, another 20, 30 feet north from the driveway?
Hey, Mark, if you will, please. We put the KGIS clip. Yes, thank you. The property in question is on the upstream side of the culvert crossing, and I don't know if you notice on I guess it'd be on the right side of the right side of Admiral Road. The zone AE, it moves to the south toward Kingston Pike. And the town has an aquatic buffer that basically for the most part, it follows that 100-year or 500-year floodplain. So I guess the reasoning, when we have a heavy rain event, like a 100-year flood event, which is what this map is based on, or a 500-year flood event, the water stages up behind that culvert in order to push through to get to the Premier Eye Care side.
Mhm.
So that's the, I guess, the rationale. We're kind of that, our constraints are pushed to the south on that side of Admiral Road. It would be very involved. It would be very involved to construct even that limited amount of sidewalk to the north.
Okay, so where is your driveway entry point compared to the one for Premier? Is it directly opposite, or are you further north or further
It's
south?
It's directly across from the Admiral, or from Premier Eye Care.
Okay, and you're not going to have fill in there between the dumpster pad and the north side of your driveway?
Yes, there will be fill, but we're also accommodating accommodating drainage from Kingston Pike and from in the parking lot. So we can't fill up and drain that portion of the site.
Okay, so that's literally a drainage pathway to go down to Turkey Creek, basically.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
I think from the staff's perspective, it's probably, at least from my view, better just to stop it at the driveway instead of having a short section that really goes to nowhere and it kind of does drop off pretty steeply. I think it just is maybe a little bit safer situation because it may imply something that really is not available. And
was there any reason why Premier's extended 30, 40 feet north?
Well, my guess Chris probably can answer this, but they probably took it to the aquatic buffer line. And that's another issue, like Chris was talking about, is in order to extend it here, you'd have to go into the town's aquatic buffer, which obviously would have to happen eventually if a large scale improvement were made to Admiral Road.
We were trying to, to install as much as we could per ordinance. And frankly, in this case, we're in the case of the subject project, we're encouraging even pedestrians, if they're going to cross Admiral Road, we'd rather them not cross at the driveway entrance. We'd rather them cross at the intersection of Kingston Pike and Admiral Road, because we're defining pedestrian, we're defining a crosswalk and that kind of thing. And it's actually, we can make that section ADA compliant, whereas on in this case, Admiral Road is pretty steep in that location.
It is.
So
yeah.
we're really honestly don't want pedestrians to even consider. Well, I mean, they can consider, but we don't want to urge people to use that section of Admiral Road for crossing and that kind of thing.
Gotcha. I was just trying to make sure that we were fair to the Premier people. If the town had required them to put that in, we ought to have a good reason why we're not requiring you to put it in. So I didn't know any of the history here, so I appreciate that.
All right, do we have any further questions of any board members of either Mr. Shipley or the applicant's representative? If there are no further questions, the board will entertain any motions.
John Hoffman, move to approve.
And Mr. Hoffman, with regard to the motion, are you intending to include the staff's suggested conditions that the attorney for the applicant prepare the necessary document to run with the land with regard to making improvement if there's a connection in the future?
Yes, indeed. It would be to approve as with all of the conditions that were defined by the town and discussed here tonight.
And Mr. Hoffman, what is the reason for the variance? Is it because of the topographic and context issues that have been stated with the unusual topographic conditions on that side?
Yes, that would be, from my perspective, that would be the rationale, the topographic issues, the possibility of putting something into the floodplain that doesn't make sense, that would only have to be ripped out and done over again when, if or when the road is ever improved. To me, it seems like a rational thing to just wait until a more significant project happens before the sidewalk requirements are carried further north.
All right, I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Scott Meyer, second.
All right. Do I have any discussion with regard to the motion? If there's no discussion, then we'll call for the vote and ask Mr. Shipley to run down roll, please.
Okay, Board Member Collins,
Yes.
Board Member Holliday,
Yes.
Chairman Alley,
Yes.
Board Member Meyer, excuse me. Youth to Planning Commission, we have a Myers.
It's all right. I'll try to make it difficult for you.
Okay, and then Board Member Hoffman.
Yes.
Okay, the request passes by a vote of 5-0, subject to the conditions noted by staff.
All right.
Thank you all.
Thank you. All right, the third and final item on tonight's agenda is a public hearing on a request for an administrative interpretation as to whether a dog behavioralist and trainer would be considered a professional service as defined in Chapter 2 of the Farragut zoning ordinance. Balanced paws canine training is the applicant. And do we have a representative from the applicant here this evening?
Yes, I'm the co-owner.
Very good. Good to have you with us. All right, then let's go ahead and hear from Mr. Shipley, and then we'll swear the applicant in.
Okay, this request is kind of for something that the board doesn't do a whole lot of. It's really an interpretation of a use or activity in the general commercial zoning district, and whether the proposed use or activity is consistent with or similar to professional services as defined in Chapter 2 of the zoning ordinance. If you refer to the definition in Chapter 2 of professional services, it states the following: services provided by a member of a recognized profession. And then it goes further to say such activities include medical, legal, dental, scientific consulting, insurance agent, architectural, engineering, land planning, financial, and business consulting services, accounting offices, and other similar activities as defined by the Board of Zoning Appeals. So the Board of Zoning Appeals can review the definition and the activities listed and make it, and has the authority to make a determination as to whether something that's not specifically addressed in the definition is similar to the definition and other uses or activities that are referenced in the definition. This particular activity is pretty unique, at least in the town. It involves dog behavior training, which to some degree, this activity, there's training sessions that are conducted frequently in, some of our existing retail pet stores like Petco. You go in there and sometimes they have obedience training. That's one element of what the applicant, I believe, is involved with, but in much more in depth than that. But and that really, the activity in those facilities hasn't really been questioned because the main use was a retail use, which is a permitted use in the C1 zoning district. So this particular request is to conduct the training activity as the only activity within a space in a location that is in the general commercial zoning district. The owner is currently conducting their business from their home in Kingsgate, but their business has grown and really is beyond what would be a customary home occupation. So they're looking for other locations to try to provide this service. So basically, when we started looking at this, I looked at the definition, I looked at what the applicant does, and what they're proposing, and I mean, it does seem to the staff that the proposed activity would be similar to activities that are specifically listed in the definition of professional services. In that the trainer in this case is a certified professional. There was a copy of the certification that was in the packet, certified through Animal Behavior Institute. And the activities, as I understand it, that are being conducted are very similar to activities that are already being conducted in retail pet stores that are operating in the town in the C1 zoning district. I mean, if you take a literal reading of professional services, it says the first part of that definition is a service provided by a member of a recognized profession. And I think that the applicant does satisfy that aspect of the language. I think that a question and or concern that may frankly be beyond the ability for the board to address is the nature of the activity, and basically ensuring that the activity is not creating a nuisance or a disturbance. Basically, it's operating in the same general manner that these kind of services are operating in facilities like Petco and other pet retail places, that essentially you wouldn't really know what's going on from the outside, and there would be no impact to adjacent tenants if you're in a multiple tenant building. It would seem to me that this kind of activity may be better suited in a freestanding space that's not attached to another tenant, so that you would have an opportunity to have the same effect as what is happening in Petco, for example, with obedience training and things like that. So, I think if you just take, a literal reading of the definition with what's being proposed, I think staff would feel that it is a similar activity. I think it's just a matter of if that activity can be contained within a space and function in the same general manner that it does in facilities like Petco. I think the staff would consider that to be a similar activity in C1. I think if it's getting beyond that and it's evolving into exterior elements, then I think it may need to be dealt with legislatively and provide some parameters to deal with that. Similar to what we did a few years ago with kennels. This is not a kennel by any means what's being proposed here, but the idea was to have some doggy daycare facilities provided for in C1, and we established a number of parameters for the outside component of those kind of activities. So that's kind of an overview from the staff's perspective. This item, it's a little bit different, and I'll try to answer any questions that any of y'all have. I know the applicant is here, and we can certainly talk with you all about the specifics of what they do and what they envision they would do in a space in C1. If y'all have any questions for me, just let me know.
Right. Go ahead. Does anyone have a question for Mr. Shipley?
I do. This is Jim. Mark, Just a point of clarification, are we to decide whether this meets the definition of a professional service? Or are we to decide if it's not in the proper location for a professional service business?
Well, I think you're being asked to look at is whether it's a similar activity. It's an other similar activity based on the definition of professional services in Chapter 2. Now, if you want to, preface any action taken on, you would consider it to be similar if it is in a freestanding building with no exterior component and thus function basically identically to training that is provided currently in retail facilities, that would be fine. I think ultimately we may need to be addressed legislatively. Certainly, if there's any exterior component, I think it would need to be captured in some text amendments. But at this point, I think the applicant's just requesting, your interpretation as to whether what they do would be comparable to a professional service.
Hey, Mark, may I ask
Yeah.
a question?
Yeah.
So the only question before us is if it is a considered compatible as a business in that district. Anything beyond that, as far any exterior use of the property for dog training or any kind of noise hindrance or anything, that's based on the leaser, correct?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, because I think you're just looking to see if this would fall under the general realm of a professional service based on how it's treated in our zoning ordinance.
So that's the only question before us.
Yes.
This is John Hoffman. I have a question for the applicant. Is it your intention for the canines in training to stay in the facility overnight, or would they be coming and going and come for an hour or whatever?
Mr. Hoffman, let me swear the applicant in first.
Sure. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's fine. If you will, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give this board is true and correct? So help you God.
Yes.
And if you would please just state your name, your address, and your relationship to the applicant, and then certainly address Mr. Hoffman's question.
Okay, my name is Lincoln D'Souza. This is my wife, Laura. She's my business partner. We own Balance Paws Canine Training. My address is 628 Banbury Road in Farragut. And no dogs would be staying overnight. I run a strict day train program, and then I have clients. Usually right now I'll go out to clients' homes and see them all across Knox, actually right up until, I've done it right up until Nashville, but we'll have clients coming in to train in group classes or individual sessions. I just wanted to address something that Mark said earlier. Yeah, we're very similar to what Petco does, except I'm a lot different. I handle more behavioral issues with dogs. Anybody's welcome to come to my home and see what we do on a daily basis right now. Today we had about 25 dogs in the day train program. It wasn't a bark. We have dogs on treadmills working. We have dogs working on place work. We'll be inside the facility, and the facility that we're looking at right now, or the retail space we're looking at, there's actually 2 units, and we're actually looking at leasing both the units. We take them on long walks as part of the day train program. It's not uncommon if you search my Facebook page or my Instagram. I have 5 employees that work with me. We'll take 25 dogs out for a walk at the same time, type of thing. So that's where they get their outdoor excursion through neighborhoods and whatnot. But it's strictly inside the facility. There's no outside running around barking and that type of thing. It's really different than, I guess, what you would consider a dog daycare. We're not. We call it boot camp. So.
Thank you. Yeah, the important thing to me was if the dog was staying overnight, in essence, we would have a kennel situation, even though it's obviously a very focused activity that you're carrying out.
Yeah, I don't do board and train programs. I personally don't believe in board and train programs. I think the client has to work with the dog to get what they want in their home atmosphere. A dog can come and stay with me and act totally different and go back home and revert. So I that's something I don't really believe in. No.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I have another question for the applicant.
Certainly.
I was just wondering about your neighborhood homeowners association. Have they taken a position on this, or do they endorse it, or?
We don't have a HOA where I am. I have spoken to all my neighbors from streets, not just on my street, but following streets. They love what I do. Actually, a lot of them come to me with their dogs for issues. So yeah, I would love to stay here, but like Mark said, I've completely outgrown. I mean, I started with just myself doing this and my wife. I employ five people right now, 6 on a part-time basis. It's just too much for this, even though I have a half acre and it's great here. But we're looking to take it to the next level and actually give back to the community as well.
Mr. Chairman, Scott Meyer, I have a couple questions.
Certainly.
Okay. So first question is, thank you. First off, applicants, thank you for coming before us tonight. So I know it takes time out of your schedule, and we appreciate it. Can you tell me an estimate of the amount of time a dog would be in your facility on any given day?
For the day train program, and it's not just me there, there's 5 of us there. A dog will be generally dropped off by about 8:30 and they go home at 4.
Okay.
You know, and during that time, we're working with them on certain behavior. I mean, our walk alone is about 2 hours to get them in a state of mind that we can actually start training. So I approach it from a dog psychology perspective, and then we start the training with them.
Okay. And so how is that duration of time comparable to activities at Petco? In other words, if I have a dog I actually do have a dog with behavioral issues, honestly, and if I wanted to take her to Petco, what activities and duration of time are happening at Petco that match the duration of time and activities at your shop?
Well, Petco does it a lot differently. I think they do one-on-one or small little group trainings that last maybe an hour at a time in that, where we do it totally different. I mean, before a dog can come to the day training program, I go out and visit these clients in their home either once or twice and make sure what we're going to be implementing or teaching the dog, they're going to do as well. This is not a sit, stay, come type of place. I do teach those, but it's not. This is more on terms of having a well-mannered dog, so a dog that's not going to counter surf and do all those other things. So this is where we're different than a Petco completely. Petco's more of the sit, stay, come type of thing. I don't think they do in homes and stuff like that at all.
Okay, thank you. And finally, can you tell me, give us a description of the activities that you had to participate in order to achieve your certificate?
Yeah. I've been in this about 7 years. I used to work at a vet hospital, a local vet hospital. I started their dog daycare program. I worked there 3 years. In that time, I went to Animal Behavioral Institute. I have 3 dogs of my own that I went through the program of behavior training, nutrition, and also disability training in that course. I graduated there with a 4.0. Also in that time, I went to study with the dog whisperer, Cesar Milan. I studied with him for 2 years, pretty much. I now work as part of his team um, for international students coming to California and doing that. Unfortunately, because of COVID last year, haven't traveled there, but I've done that. I've also been to Australia, was commissioned to go over there and work with some trainers over there. So I have quite a big background in dog psychology, animal behavior, um, not just the obedience, not just the sit, stay, come type of thing.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. So it sounds, I guess from my perspective, what I hear you saying, it does sound like you're a professional that would have a knowledge base that somebody off the street would not have, that we would have to come to you and bring our dog and partake of your experience and your education and the training that you've been certified with. So,
Yeah.
So, okay. Thank you. No further questions.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions for either Mr. Shipley or for the applicant's representative?
I have one more question. I guess this is probably directed toward Mark. Mark, is this setting a precedent for future services similar to this, or is this decision based on this particular location only?
Well, I think it's up to the board how you want to address this, but if you could stipulate that you would, if you do consider this to be a professional service, that the activity as outlined by the applicant would have to be within inside. I mean, I guess they'll take the dogs out for a walk. I'm not sure if they're transported to an area where they walk them or if it's out of the facility. I'm not sure how that's handled, but you know, and it basically, or it would be in a freestanding building situation where it wouldn't, you know, create a nuisance that you wouldn't find in other professional services that would be defined, you know, as defined in our ordinance. I mean, if as I look at the professional services definition, I mean, it says such activities include, one of them scientific consulting. I mean, in a way, it's a science, really, to me. The animal behavior is really a science, and there's consultation happening. So I think from the activity itself, the staff, again, we do feel that it is consistent. It's a service that is provided by a member of a recognized profession. I think the key is just that it doesn't become an activity that is atypical of those that are specifically listed there due to an inherent characteristic of that activity. So again, you know, if the board wants to provide some stipulation as to their understanding of this being a professional service, you certainly have the ability to do that. I think if there was going to be an exterior component of this, then it's questionable as to whether it would be an activity that's similar to those that are specifically listed, because none of them have an exterior element.
Well, the purpose of my question is, let's assume that this particular operation is a professional service. It meets all the criteria, all the definitions, and they obviously are very, I guess, interested in getting this certification or recognition. But what happens if another dog trainer comes in and they are not quite as methodical or professional as this operation? So that's what I'm trying to understand is, will this actually establish a new classification for any and all dog behaviorists and trainers, or will it just apply to this one particular operation?
Well, I mean, it's there's never a, you know, a situation that's going to be perfect. And I mean, you have gyms that are, gyms and yoga studios that are allowed in general commercial, and they can become a nuisance with music, uh, people banging the floors and equipment and all that kind of stuff. So, and those are all operated differently. Some are more, cognizant of their effect on their surroundings than others. And that certainly could happen. Again, from a staff's perspective, I would only consider this a similar activity if the activity is conducted only within the space, and you essentially wouldn't know that is happening unless
Okay.
you're in
All
the
right.
space itself.
You answered the question. Thank you.
I've got one follow-up question. On the last page of the material in the packet, there's a copy of the applicant's certificate. I'm assuming, and help me understand that there's a certain amount of rigor behind that certificate that somebody doesn't, somebody who is significantly less trained than you can't easily obtain such a certificate and pass themselves off as a professional at this level.
Absolutely. That was 2 years of studying while I was working. It's a very rigorous course through Animal Behavioral Institute. It's not something that someone can just get. I mean, you have to put the work into it. And if someone does put the work into it, kudos on them. I mean,
sure.
It was tough. It was really tough for me. I come from a financial background, 25 years in finance. So for me going into this field, it worked my brain in a whole different way. Yeah, it was good. So yeah, if someone does get it, perfect on them. But it's not something you can just get from, I guess, the internet. You see all these things that you can just type in something and get something. No, it's not like that.
Right.
Yeah.
I wonder if there might be some way to stipulate in whatever motion we would craft that would require a certificate of the nature of what you hold, so that we have some control over, somebody like me saying, "Hey, I've got one." I have no idea what I'm really doing.
This is my plan for the future. I don't know if I should bring it up here, but my plan for the future is that I'll be training people to do what I do, type of thing. So that might be a certification for them in the future. Come shadow me, work with me, do the courses with me, type of thing, over a couple of years, and maybe I'll certify them. If you guys like what I do, that could be a process going forward for Farragut.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, do any of our board members have any further questions for either Mr. Shipley or the applicant's representative? There are no further.
Scott Meyer,
I have a comment.
Yes. So I this is really just to the other board members. I would be comfortable with considering this professional service, but I do think stipulating that the activity has to be in a freestanding building and cannot be. It has to be, all the business has to be conducted inside, just like any other business would. So I'm just making that comment.
All right, the board will entertain any motions at this time.
So therefore, I guess I'll move to approve the applicant's request that we approve this particular activity as a profession as described in our packet tonight, for the reasons of the activity in this business will be similar to other services at Petco. And I would like to stipulate that the business has to take place, though, inside the building itself, and would not have activity happening outside.
What can I just ask one question? What about the walks we take the dogs on? That's a huge part of dog psychology. The pack walk is integral. We're not going to be hanging around other merchants. We'll walk into a neighborhood and
Yeah.
we do a nice good 2-hour walk.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that because of the way you described it. Just
Okay.
for that reason, because your people are free to walk their animals in our
Perfect.
town as long as we follow the leash rules and whatnot.
Absolutely.
So I don't have a problem with that.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, if you put them on a chain or something like that outside the building for a couple hours, which I know you wouldn't,
No.
if you did something like that, that would be problematic.
Absolutely.
And my concern is that we don't open up a opportunity for doggy daycares to come in and say, well, we want to do a doggy daycare right next to the Kroger.
Right.
And I think what differentiates, in my mind, your business from a doggy daycare is that the activity's happening inside. You might take the dogs out for a walk, but people walk dogs all over our community. So that's where a doggy daycare might have animals outside for extended periods of time outside the actual building. And I would not be comfortable with that, but I don't think that's what you're doing.
No, not at all.
That was a very long motion, Chairman, Mr. Chairman, and Mark. I don't know how to word that any other way.
Mr. Meyer,
Commissioner, was that also subject to the freestanding condition, or just that it be inside the space, other than just the walks that would occur, for the training purposes?
Can you ask your question again, Mark?
Did you also stipulate that it be in a freestanding space, or just that the activity be inside only, except for the walks that the applicant has said that they
I'm
would
actually
do?
stipulating both. It'd be a freestanding
Okay.
space and the activity, because the Petco is freestanding, right?
Actually, it's not.
No,
The
it's
space
not, is it?
the space we're looking at, there is an adjoining unit that's empty, and we're actually looking at renting that space out as well. So it technically
Okay.
would be sort of a freestanding space, but not really.
Okay, so I will stipulate that just in my motion, it doesn't necessarily have to be freestanding, but the activity has to happen inside the building.
Thank you.
and Mr. Meyer, to be clear, with regard to the question about whether a dog behavioralist and trainer with credentials similar in nature to those of the applicants is a professional service, that is part of your motion, is that would be deemed, given these circumstances and these facts, to be a professional service within the meaning of Chapter 2 of the Farragut zoning ordinance. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Thank you for clarifying. Yes.
Certainly. All right. With that motion being made, do I have a second?
A second, Collins.
All right. Is there any discussion? If there's no discussion, then I call for the vote. Mr. Shipley?
Okay. Board member Collins,
Yes.
board member Holliday,
Yes.
Chairman Alley,
Yes.
board member Meyer,
Yes.
and board member Hoffman.
Yes.
And the motion passes by a vote of 5-0 with the conditions stipulated in the motion.
Thank you.
Certainly. Thank you for your application. All right. That concludes the agenda that I have for this meeting of the Farragut Board of Zoning Appeals. The only housekeeping issue, Mr. Shipley, do you have links that you can send out to that training that was recorded the other day yet? Or maybe
Yeah, I will. Yeah, let me figure out the best. I might just forward you the email that we have that has all 6 of them in one email. I think John might have participated in the first 3 the other evening, but it has all 6 there. So if you all end up watching those, just let me know. Send me an email that you watched them, and then I've got a spreadsheet that I keep with regards to y'all's training, and I can acknowledge that, and that would basically take a couple hours, about half of your required training. if you watch all 6 of those. So
That'd be
I'll
awesome.
send you
Thank you, Mark.
that email, and it has them all. And just let me know if you get a chance to watch them.
Okay.
Sounds
Awesome.
great.
Thank you.
Okay.
At this point, the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. This is
Second.
A second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
All right, take care, everyone. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.